Go a Viking on Viking Hot Takes.
What is up, everybody? Welcome to Viking Hot Takes, our 20-minute fast-paced show where we cover the hottest Viking stories. And of course, it might look a little different today. We have Flip is on vacation, and the one, the only, the pride of Upper Iowa football, Myles Gorham has joined us. You know him from the Climbing the Pocket, I believe, a co-founder of Climbing the Pocket. And of course, you know myself, Eric Thompson from Daily Norseman. Myles, how are you doing today?
I'm doing good, man. Thanks for having me. Flip hit me up the other day and was like, "Hey, can you be on Hot Takes?" And I didn't know he wasn't going to be here, so I'm
Yes.
filling in. But I'm
Yeah,
I'm, ex-
can
I'm
you,
excited to fill in.
right, yes. He didn't tell you that you had to replace him on Hot Takes. But yes, so it's just
Right,
the
right.
two of us. But you know the format. It's pretty straightforward. We put 20 minutes on the clock. We each ask each other 3 questions, and we fire our takes back and forth. And at the end, we're all better for it, hopefully. So Dave, on the ones and twos in the background, if you are ready, I think let's just get right into it. In 5, 4. And starting out here, so I'll ask the first question this week. Okay, it has not been a great start for the Vikings in the preseason, especially on the offensive side of the ball. Again, it is the preseason, but Myles, my first question for you is how worried should we be about the Vikings offense after the first two preseason games?
Um, it's a tough question to ask, just a tough answer because I think there should be some worry, and we talked about this a little bit on Matt Anderson's show last night on Vikings Happy Hour, but
Mhm.
um, no, in the sense that the Vikings haven't played a lot of their starters, like the key outside of Kirk Cousins and some of the key guys. They haven't played. Justin Jefferson, Adam Thielen played 2 snaps and then got hurt.
Mhm.
They played Irv Smith, but offensive line wise, they still don't have Christian Darrisaw. Dalvin Cook hasn't played, so you're Dalvin Cook and Justin Jefferson are probably the top 2 players for the offense that you want to see cook and go. And when they're not in there, I guess that's where my worry is more than anything is like your 2 best players are out. You have no one really to supplement them. Like, yes, Thielen and Irv Smith are really good complements to them, but for them to have to be the 1 and 2, that'd be a really tough change for this offense. So for me, the only concern I have is the reports out of camp where the offense hasn't looked that good. Preseason is a little bit different because, like I said, you don't always have starters out there. You don't always have everyone playing, and everything's really vanilla. Like, the offense is really vanilla. So where I'm more worried is the fact that throughout camp they haven't really looked that great or been consistent, and they should be, because they're the side of the ball that's been the most consistent. They have the least amount of turnover, and those things. So outside of like offensive coordinator, but Clint Kubiak should at least be able to run the plays his dad ran. So you would think there'd be
Right.
a little bit of that consistency there. So that's probably where my concern is more than anything.
Yeah, and I think for the games themselves, and like the Denver game, that can be pretty easily explained away because there were
Right,
30 different
right,
players setting out or something like that. And we already knew that the Vikings didn't have a ton of depth, and the Broncos played a lot more of their better players for longer. And the Colts game was definitely a little bit more alarming because the starters did play a little bit, and the offense did next to nothing, especially that Kellen
right.
Mond and Jake Browning, and of course you want to see at least something out of those backups. Of course, then again, I guess we should probably be pretty used for the Vikings offense doing nothing against the Colts, because that's what they did in week 2 of the regular season last week. But I mean, I never put much weight in those preseason games, but it is all the other stuff you've been talking about. They just haven't looked good in their practices. It's been inconsistent just with the people that are available there as well. And you're exactly right. That was the side of the ball that we thought was going to be that's fine. Of course, there's a ton of turnover on the defense. There needed to be a ton of turnover on the defense because that was easily the worst defense of Zimmer's tenure in Minnesota. But it looks like the defense is going to be in pretty decent shape, and that it looks like the offense is a really big candidate for aggression. So I think don't, like I always say about the Vikings, especially at this time of year, that don't worry now, or don't panic now. There'll be plenty of time for that later.
Exactly.
All right. So back, of course, now we're worried about the offense. You have your first questions about how worried about we should be about something else. So go ahead.
Yeah. So Eric, how worried are or should we be about the backup quarterback situation?
Yeah, I mean, we already touched on it a little bit, and the good news is that for all things you can debate about Kirk Cousins, the good and the bad, the ups and downs, how much money he gets, how much he should get, things like that. The one thing that's kind of indisputable about his career so far is that he has been incredibly durable throughout his career. He just hasn't missed games. He hasn't had any major injuries. He's always been available, and that's, sometimes your best ability in the NFL is availability, and he's definitely checked that box. That said, if Kirk misses any time due to injury or things that may not be related to injury and maybe be avoidable, but he's maybe not avoiding them as well, I won't get into that part of it. Like if he does miss time, it really looks like the Vikings are in trouble, especially if it happens early on in the season, because Kellen Mond was a project, I think, to begin with. I didn't think he was going to see much of the field at all to begin with, but missing time in training camp has really kind of put him behind the eight ball, and he looked basically lost against the Colts. I thought they were in the Denver game. He showed flashes of his, at least his athletic ability and the things he can do physically. We haven't seen it yet, and I just don't think he's ready to play right now. If you throw him out there and into the fray in the NFL, I just don't think he's going to do that great. And as great, I shouldn't say great, as solid as Jake Browning's night practice was at TCO when he was literally the only quarterback available. I was there in person. It was kind of surprising. It's like, okay, maybe we'll be okay in Jake Browning's hand. I mean, that feels like it was years ago, because both of his performances in the preseason have just been kind of a disaster. Like he just kind of looks lost out there as well. And so, yeah, if it does happen, it's going to be trouble. And kind of my opinion, and I think the consensus at that point, and I've seen it kind of around Vikings Twitter as well. It's like, well, it doesn't really matter who the second quarterback is, because if Cousins goes down for any extended amount of time, the Vikings are kind of screwed. Like that's kind of where it is right now. So like I wish there was some free agent or someone there, a really easy thing that they could trade for and get that, a veteran present. There isn't there are definitely some options out there that might be available, but there isn't any surefire thing. So yeah, I think it's one of those things you hope you don't have to worry about, especially with Cousins, but in this year out of any, it might be a crucial thing. And as of right now, as it stands, especially if it happens early in the season, they are going to be in big trouble. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, you hit it. And with this team, backup quarterback has always been an important position, more than some other teams. Even with Kirk Cousins here, you never know, right? I'm with you though. I think I even tweeted out the other day. I think, in my opinion, if Mike Zimmer and Rick Spielman weren't on the hot seat, quote unquote, like the assumption is that they're tied at the hip. If things go south after this year, after how last year went, that they might be out, they might be gone. They might, like the Wilson might clean house. If that wasn't the case, I would say let it ride. In the fact that you're not going to find a quarterback that's competent enough to be a true backup for you this late in the season, at least without giving up decent draft capital or having to pay a pretty decent premium for him. But with that said, they are on the hot seat, at least what it seems like. So I think at this point with Mond and Browning, the best bet would be to probably cut Browning, let him be on the practice squad. You have to keep Mond around. He's your third round picks. Let him to continue to develop. But you might need to go out and get a guy like a Chase Daniels if he gets cut by North Dakota or by the Chargers because of your boy Easton Stick from North Dakota State.
Exactly. Yeah,
Right, exactly. And he might be the backup in LA. And if he is, maybe Chase Daniels is expendable. He's had a lot of success against the Vikings when he's gotten to play. So that's an option. I think I've seen CJ Beathard out there too for the Jaguars. I doubt that they keep three quarterbacks. So unless they trade Minshew. So those are a couple names that I could think that could be decent backups that might be able to get you through a game or two. But again, like you said, for a long stretch of time, no one's really going to come in here at this point and change that. So I'm not as worried about it, but it's concerning that Mond, even with missing time, couldn't step up to at least be a capable backup. Because that was always my expectations for him. Is like, if at worst he's the long-term backup, at worst, in my opinion. If he can't even get to that level, that's worrisome.
Right, exactly. So, moving on to our second question here, there is one preseason game left, and I think that's good for to work out some of the kinks that the Vikings are currently experiencing. But going into Friday's game at Kansas City, which players have the most to gain or lose on Friday?
Mike Hughes. No. Revenge game. No. For me, I think we just kind of touched on it, like Browning and Mond. I don't think there's a lot they can do, but I think if they could show even a little bit more progression and ability to take over the offense and command the offense from what we haven't seen in the first two games, I just think that would go a long way for the Vikings. But some players that aren't quarterback related, I think KJ Osborne's another guy that we haven't really seen much. There's a lot of hype during camp, a lot of hype during the spring. I just want to see a little bit more from him during a preseason game. He's had a couple catches, but there really hasn't been much flash because if Justin Jefferson or Adam Thielen get hurt, I know Dede Westbrook's here, but they still might let KJ Osborne see the first, those first reps. So I just want to see him step up a little bit. That tight end position is another one for me. Like I've been really worried about tight end. So I think for me, Zach Davidson, Brandon Dillon, both of those guys haven't really done that much in the preseason so far. So for me, I'd say those would be the top guys outside of the quarterback position.
Yeah, and I think for Davidson especially, like he might have to do something just to prevent being cut. I know he's a 5th-round pick, and the Vikings traditionally try to hold on to most of their draft picks. But I mean, what does he have? One catch so far in the preseason. He's played a decent amount as well, so I think he needs to prove his worth. I think a couple other players. I think Cam Dantzler kind of needs to have a big performance. I mean, he kind of came in as the assumed starter. He started last year as a rookie. And he might be kind of 5th on the depth chart right now because he's certainly behind Peterson and Breland. I think those are going to be the starting outside corners. He's not really competing so much with Mackenzie Alexander, but I think Alexander has the slot position down. And as of right now, it seems like he might even be behind Chris Boyd, which was when camp started. That kind of seemed crazy, but that's kind of where he might be sitting. And I think this might be Jalen Holmes' last chance at a roster spot as well. I personally, as of right now, I think he's probably on the outside looking in, but he might have a chance to sneak in on that roster now that Janarius Robinson, the rookie, is out on the IR. That might get him an opportunity. Maybe if he can make some plays, improve his versatility, because they kind of try to make him an inside-outside guy. He's back mostly at defensive end. Yeah, it's going to be a lot those kind of fringe players making that last push in the last impression.
Yeah,
So
the last one too is. Real quick, the last one I had too is safety. I think the backup safety position, Cameron Bynum, Myles Dorn, sounds like Josh Metellus got hurt, so he might not play. The position behind Harrison and Woods is up for grabs too.
Definitely wide open. So your second question, go ahead.
Yeah, so for me, I know we like to talk about like who is surprise cuts, but like who's someone that would surprise you if they made the 53? Like I don't even mean the initial 53 because we know how that fluctuates, but like who would surprise you if they're on the roster week 1?
Yeah, I mean, I hate to say it, and I don't know. I guess I don't know how much huge a surprise it would be, but I really think, at least in the week 1 roster, we might see either Dakota Dozier or Drew Samia on the 53-man roster. And I personally do not want any part of either of those two on the 53-man roster. But that said, with Darisaw hurt, I still really think the Vikings will start, at least to start the season until they know Darisaw is all the way back, with 10 offensive linemen. And that with the numbers falling how they are, I think one of those two probably makes it, just because there's not a ton of answers right now at the guard rotation after kind of the starters. And probably, it sounds like the 3rd-round draft pick has finally been living up to his draft spot the last couple weeks, but it sounds like Dave's still quite a bit ways behind. And I like what Blake Brandel has done for most of the preseason. I don't think his spot is guaranteed yet either. So as much as it pains me to say, I think we're going to probably be stuck with one of those two, hopefully not both, but at least one of those two of PFF's first ballot Hall of Shamers. They're always at the very last. It's always 68 guards played, and number 67 was one of those two. So I hope I'm wrong, but as right now, that's who I think. Who is your biggest surprise?
Yeah, I think for me it would be like one of the safeties we talked about. I think Metellus or Myles Dorn. I think Cameron Bynum's going to make it, mainly because of draft position, and I think they like his long-term ability as he progresses toward making the transition from corner to safety. But I think if they were, because we assume that this team's going to is going to have 4 safeties. That's what they usually keep. That's what they should keep. I would be really surprised if they didn't go out and get somebody to replace a Myles Dorn or a Josh Metellus at this point. For me, it'd be one of those two guys. I kind of what I mentioned earlier. with the practice squad rule and those things, I kind of think it might be in their best interest to cut Jake Browning and let him be on the practice squad, because with any COVID situation or anything like that, he could be called up, that same day. So that I feel like it'd be a waste to keep three quarterbacks on roster right now if you can keep him on the practice squad, and he could still be called up every week,
Right.
at least for the first few weeks or whatever it is. But I feel like with that rule in place, that just gives them more flexibility. So I would be a little bit surprised if he made the roster just for that reason.
Yep, I think you're right. All right, well, we're going to transition for the next one. We did talk about the surprise player to make it. Name your biggest surprise cut from the 53-man roster.
That's always a tough. So Matthew Collar mentioned Cameron Dancer on the Happy Hour show last night. I thought that was wild. I said, no way. Like, there's just no way that they're going to cut him. It would have to be like really bad, like personality wise, all those things. I think it would take more than just like a few bad preseason games to cut him. But I thought that was a pretty out on the limb guess. But for me, I think a surprise cut will be James Lynch. I think he's a guy that we've heard some praise from Mike Zimmer. We've heard the fact that they kind of like how he's progressed, but I just don't see where he fits into the rotation, where he fits in the depth, where he fits in on this roster from an athletic standpoint, from a position standpoint. So for me, yeah, I just think it would kind of surprise me. He was a 4th-round pick last year. For him not to be able to make the team, I think that's just kind of, we've seen a little bit of a pattern in the last few years where some of those mid-round picks, where the Vikings have had a lot of them, haven't really lived up to it. And so for me, to have a 4th-round pick cut in year 2 would be kind of disappointing.
Yeah, for sure. I think for me, I mean, I actually, when I took notes for this, I said the surprise would be Jake Browning, but you covered the exact scenario that I was going to
Damn, I'm
suggest,
sorry.
because I think
I ruined it for
that's no, that's perfect. We're on the same page there. But that's exactly kind of the way I thought. I thought that I'm of the mentality that the Vikings are probably kicking the tires on some of the other options anyways. And I would not be surprised in the least if Jake Browning was not on the 53-man roster. I think that your suggestion of him probably being on the practice squad and being available to be called up is definitely the likely scenario if he isn't on the final 53. But I wouldn't be stunned either, especially if they do, it depends. It's always a numbers game if it goes position by position, that they only keep the 3, right? Like maybe just that they roll with only Smith, Woods, and Bynum at safety, and Dorn and Metellus are on the outside looking in. I think that is a definite possibility, because we're going to touch on that on your final question. But like I think there's probably some moves to be made, especially after teams around the league are making their cuts. So I think I wouldn't be surprised to see 3 safeties, or I wouldn't be surprised to see two quarterbacks as well. So your final question, like we've already been kind of hinting around this, but there is plenty to talk about here. So go ahead.
Yeah. So as we've been talking about, are there any moves you'd like to see this team make, whether it's a free agent, maybe a waiver wire claim, or a trade that you'd like to see before week 1, or even maybe like right after week 1, like early in this as the season starts here?
Yeah, I mean we've touched on the quarterback thing. I think it's definitely, if one of those is available and the price isn't too high, just to have a better backup plan than what they currently have. I think that's definitely a possibility. There are two defensive positions, and we already touched on one at safety. I think that's definitely one they have to be looking at. The other one is linebacker, because Anthony Barr is still out with, we don't know exactly what. An injury. We think it's an injury. I mean, he's there. We see him at the end of practice, but he's not really playing. So again, I mean, I've seen other people try to speculate that he's going to get put on the PUP list or anything. I think that's kind of irresponsible. But I think overall, that's definitely an area of need, because after Kendricks and Barr, it's a whole bunch of question marks. It sounds like Surratt's had a pretty good preseason. I'm not sure if I want him plug and play to be kind of an every down guy. And the same thing with Nick Vigil. I like him as a third linebacker, Ben Gedeon kind of role, but if you're throwing him at the as a starter, that's a huge drop off. And of course, one of the names that just got that's been thrown around. It was kind of a surprise cut, I thought, by the Packers, is bring back former Gopher Kamal Martin. I think he would actually be a pretty decent fit in the defense. And if you're looking at the safety, I think the big name that we've talked about and people have suggested, and seems like it's actually a pretty real possibility, is Will Parks. And I think that would be a really good fit too. Just get the whole Kansas City secondary. You take Hughes, we'll take two of your guys. We get Breland
Right.
and Will Parks. So I think those are the two ones, but I mean, again, that's kind of the scary part going into this season. I joked today on Twitter. It's like, I really like how this Vikings team is constructed, and I think they're going to be great this year, as long as nobody misses any games for any reason. Like, because depth is a huge concern for, and it's kind of a stars and scrubs roster. We kind of knew it going in, but hopefully they can get help at a couple of those positions. So, but I got to give you the floor. We're already at almost just a minute left. So I want to get your take on what moves you think they should make.
Yeah, I've touched on it we talked about Zach Davidson. I think tight end. I think that third tight end position is, especially if
Sure.
we don't know the status of Conklin, but he's hurt right now too. They like to use at least two tight ends a lot, and Zach Davidson clearly isn't ready for that role to step into a tight end 2 role even. So for me, I think tweak. So for me, I think going after a tight end and a waiver claim, low level trade, whatever it is, someone to come in and be your third that could step in and be a second tight end. I think a couple names. If Michael Pruitt gets released by the 49ers, he's been in this offense before. I think the Chargers have a guy named Steven Anderson. He's like their fourth tight end. He's really athletic. Mm-hmm. He's played some snaps. So again, lower level guys, but guys that you could feel comfortable stepping in. So for me, tight end, I've touched on, I think, another outside wide receiver. I don't think they have a guy that can play outside receiver opposite of, to spell a Justin Jefferson or an Adam Thielen. So I'm out of time.
Yeah, but hey, I think we covered it. I think we got through our 6 questions, and thanks a lot for everyone going along with the chat. It was good to read everyone going around. Sorry for screwing everyone up of being on this side of the screen. I know, I'm sure it was really we got a comment like that, but it was weird for me too looking back up. But Myles, it was awesome to. I think this was actually of all the crap we give each other on Twitter, I think this is the first show we've done together. So it was awesome.
Yeah.
To actually do one with you. And Dave, of course, our amazing producer with all the graphics and all the timer and everything. It was great. And next time, I'm sure Flip will be back, but we didn't burn the place down, so I think mission accomplished. And I am excited to see what the Vikings have in store on Friday. And then the next time they take the field after Kansas City, there's going to be real, meaningful football to be played. So I can't wait for that.
Let's go.
Tomorrow night, you can catch it. Climb in the pocket. The final score will go live just before that final whistle, and you'll get to see the 4th regular to make his appearance, Mr. Matt Anderson, as he joins myself and Jason Brown to discuss, hopefully, that Vikings victory down in Kansas City. Until
Thanks
then,
for watching along, everyone.
Skull, everybody! Thank you for watching or listening. As always, if you like, subscribe, and ring the bell for notifications. And if you're listening to the podcast, please rate us on your favorite aggregator. Skull, everybody!